Carl Jung's Shadow Work, 5 Transformative Stories to Discover Your True Self. Prologue, the invitation. The note appeared on a Tuesday. No one saw who pinned it to the community board at the Meridian Cafe, tucked between advertisements for yoga classes and lost cat posters. It was written in neat handwriting on cream-colored paper. You are not who you think you are. You are not who they told you to be. You are not even who you've been pretending to be, but you could be who you truly are. The question is, are you brave enough to find out? Over the next few weeks, 5 people would read those words. 5 people whose lives were about to crack open in ways they couldn't imagine. 5 people who thought they knew themselves, until they discovered they'd been living as strangers in their own skin. This is their story, but more importantly, it might be yours. Chapter 1. The Woman Who Hated Her Reflection. Maya Rodriguez had perfected the art of being perfect. At 34, she was everything she'd promised herself she'd become. Marketing director at a boutique agency, sleek apartment in the right neighborhood, wardrobe that whispered success without shouting. Her Instagram looked like a lifestyle magazine. Her performance reviews glowed. Her smile never slipped. "You're so put together," people would say, and Maya would graciously accept the compliment while mentally adding another item to her to-do list. But lately, something had been eating at her. Something she couldn't schedule away or optimize into submission. Jessica Chen, her 26-year-old assistant, who showed up to work with mismatched earrings and coffee stains on her sleeve. Jessica, who cried during team meetings when feedback got harsh. Jessica, who laughed too loudly and admitted when she didn't know things, and left sticky notes everywhere because she couldn't keep track of digital calendars. Jessica, who made Maya's jaw clench every single day. "It's unprofessional," Maya explained to her therapist during their monthly check-in. "I mean, we're running a business. There are standards." "What specifically bothers you?" Dr. Sarah Chen asked, pen poised over her notepad. Maya shifted in the leather chair. "She's just so chaotic. Yesterday, she completely forgot about a client meeting. Just forgot. And when I reminded her, she didn't even apologize properly. She just got all flustered and emotional. Like, get it together, you know? Does she do good work otherwise?" "That's the thing. Yes. Clients love her. She's creative and she somehow always pulls it off at the last minute. But the process..." Maya's hands tightened into fists. "It's painful to watch." Dr. Chen made a note. "We're almost out of time, but I want you to sit with something this week. What if Jessica isn't the problem? What if she's showing you something about yourself you're not ready to see?" Maya laughed, the sound sharp in the quiet office. "Trust me, I'm nothing like Jessica." The explosion happened on a Friday. Maya had spent all morning preparing for a pitch meeting. Slides color-coded, talking points memorized, outfit strategically chosen. Everything perfect as always. She'd asked Jessica to print the presentation decks and have them ready by 2 p.m. At 1:55, Jessica burst into Maya's office, eyes red. "I'm so sorry," she stammered. I got the files mixed up and printed the wrong version and now the printer's jammed and..." "You had one job." Maya's voice was ice. "One job." "I know, I'm so sorry, I can fix..." "Sorry doesn't fix anything, Jessica. Sorry is what incompetent people say when they screw up." Maya stood, her chair scraping against the floor. "Do you know how many hours I put into this? How important this client is?" Jessica's face crumpled. "I'll figure it out, I promise." "You know what? Just get out." The words came from somewhere deep and ugly inside Maya. "Get out of my office. I don't even want to look at you right now." Jessica fled. Maya stood there, breathing hard, her perfectly manicured hands shaking. In the window's reflection, she saw her face, twisted with rage, almost unrecognizable. And in that moment, she didn't recognize herself at all. The pitch meeting was fine. Maya printed the decks herself, smiled her professional smile, landed the client. But something had shifted. All weekend, she couldn't shake the image of Jessica's face, the crumpling, the tears, the way Maya had felt powerful and sick all at once. On Monday, Jessica called in sick. Tuesday, too. Wednesday, Maya found a resignation letter on her desk. 2 weeks' notice, professionally worded, completely impersonal. Maya should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt hollow. Thursday evening, she found herself at the Meridian Cafe, a place she'd walked past 100 times but never entered. It looked too bohemian, too unpolished. Exposed brick, mismatched furniture, the kind of place where people lingered instead of efficiently caffeinating and leaving. But tonight something pulled her inside. The woman behind the counter had silver-streaked dark hair and the kind of face that had seen things. She smiled at Maya like they were old friends. "First time here?" "Yes." Maya ordered a latte, then found herself adding, "Bad week." "Those are the weeks that teach us the most." The woman, Elena, according to her name tag, made the coffee with unhurried grace. "I'm Elena, and you look like someone who's very good at holding things together." Maya gave a tight smile. "I try." "That's what I thought." Elena handed her the latte. The foam formed into a perfect leaf. "The people we hate most are mirrors, you know. They show us what we've locked away in ourselves." Maya stared at her. "I'm sorry?" "Just something to think about." Elena's eyes were kind. "There's a community board over there if you're looking for anything. Therapy groups, workshops, that sort of thing. Sometimes we need help seeing what we can't see alone." Maya nodded stiffly and retreated to a corner table, coffee in hand. She opened her laptop, intending to work, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she found herself staring at nothing, Elena's words circling in her head. "The people we hate most are mirrors." No, that was ridiculous. She and Jessica were nothing alike. Maya was organized, professional, controlled. Jessica was chaos incarnate. Except Maya remembered being 6 years old, watching her mother stumble through the door at 2 a.m., makeup smeared, laughing too loud. Remembered her grandmother's pinched face the next morning. "Your mother is too emotional, too messy. You're going to be different, Mija. You're going to be better." And Maya had been different. She'd learned to keep everything neat, everything in its place. Emotions filed away like color-coded folders. No mess, no chaos, no vulnerability. No crying at work like a child. No forgetting things and admitting weakness. No. Maya's coffee cup trembled in her hand. No being human. She looked at her reflection in the darkened laptop screen. The woman staring back looked perfect. Hair smooth, lipstick fresh, not a crack in the surface. But underneath, Maya suddenly had the terrifying thought that if someone looked closely enough, they'd see she was hollow. Just a beautiful shell around an emptiness she'd spent 34 years pretending didn't exist. Dr. Chen's office felt different on Tuesday. Maya sat in the same chair, but something had shifted in her. "Tell me about Jessica," Dr. Chen said. And Maya did. Not the curated version she'd planned, but the truth. The rage, the shame. The way Jessica's tears had felt like an accusation. "What did her tears accuse you of?" Dr. Chen asked gently. "Of being—" Maya's throat tightened. "Cold, mean, like my grandmother." "What if I told you there's a name for what you're experiencing? In Jungian psychology, we call it the shadow." The shadow. The parts of ourselves we've rejected or denied. Often they're qualities we were taught were unacceptable. For some people, it's anger or sexuality. For others, it's vulnerability, messiness, spontaneity. All the things you've described in Jessica. Maya felt something crack open in her chest. "So you're saying I hate Jessica because she's— what? Everything I won't let myself be?" "I'm saying Jessica might be showing you the parts of yourself you locked away to survive. The parts you decided weren't allowed." Dr. Chen leaned forward. "Your grandmother taught you that emotion was weakness. That being messy meant being like your mother, out of control, unreliable. So you built a fortress of perfection. But Maya, what happened to all those feelings? All that spontaneity and vulnerability?" I don't know. They didn't disappear. They went into shadow. And now, every time you see those qualities in someone else, your shadow reacts. It rages. Because part of you is furious at having to stay locked away." Maya sat in silence, her perfect posture finally crumbling. "So what do I do?" "You start the work of integration. You begin to allow those parts of yourself to exist again, Not in the extreme way you fear. You're not going to become your mother. But in healthy ways. Letting yourself be imperfect sometimes. Expressing emotion. Being vulnerable, Dr. Chen smiled. Being human, Maya. The next morning, Maya called Jessica. I need to apologize, she said, her voice cracking on the words. What I said to you was cruel. It was unprofessional. And it was about me, not you. Silence on the other end, then. Okay, I'd like you to come back, if you're willing. More silence. Can I think about it? Of course. Maya took a breath. Jessica, you're really good at your job. I mean it. And I'm working on being less of a nightmare to work for. A small laugh. You weren't always a nightmare. But sometimes I was. Yeah, sometimes. They hung up. Maya sat at her immaculate desk, and then, almost without thinking, she swept her arm across it. Papers fluttered to the floor. Her pen holder tipped over. The neat stack of folders splayed open. She stared at the mess. Her heart was pounding. And then, for the first time in years, she laughed. Really laughed. The sound was rusty, unpracticed, but real. Elena was right. The mirror had shown her what she'd hidden. And now, finally, she was beginning to see herself. 3 weeks later, Maya was back at the Meridian Cafe. Jessica had agreed to return, with the condition that Maya started actually taking lunch breaks and stopped sending emails at 11 p.m. Maya had agreed. Elena smiled when she walked in. You look different. I feel different. Maya ordered her latte. Scared, but different. That's how you know you're growing. Elena handed her the coffee. There's a therapy group that meets here Thursday evenings, if you're interested. Dr. Chen runs it. Small group, deep work. Maya thought of Dr. Chen's words. Integration, shadow work, becoming whole. I might check it out, she said. As she turned to leave, she noticed the community board. The note was still there, slightly faded now. You are not who you think you are. Maya read it again, and this time it didn't feel threatening. It felt like permission. Permission to be messy, to be vulnerable, to be real. She took out her phone and texted Jessica, coffee stain on your shirt today. I love it. 3 dots appeared, then, who are you and what have you done with Maya? Maya smiled and typed back, I'm figuring that out. Want to help? Integration, understanding the shadow. What is the shadow? Carl Jung taught that the shadow contains all the parts of ourselves we've rejected, denied, or hidden away, usually because we were taught these qualities were unacceptable or dangerous. Your shadow isn't just negative traits. It can also hold positive qualities you never learned to express, like creativity, assertiveness, or joy. The shadow doesn't disappear just because we ignore it. Instead, it manifests in 3 main ways. 1. Projection. We see our shadow qualities in others and react strongly to them. If someone's spontaneity enrages you, ask yourself, where did I have to kill my own spontaneity? 2. Self-sabotage. Shadow material can emerge unconsciously, causing us to act in ways that contradict our conscious values, like Maya's explosion at Jessica. 3. Dreams and symbols. The unconscious tries to show us our shadow through dreams, often as threatening or rejected figures. How this showed up in Maya's story. Maya rejected all the qualities her grandmother labeled as too much: emotion, vulnerability, messiness, imperfection. She built a persona of perfection to survive. But those qualities didn't disappear. They went into shadow. When Jessica embodied everything Maya had rejected, Maya's shadow reacted with rage. Jessica wasn't the problem, she was the mirror. Reflection questions. 1. Who in your life triggers an intense negative reaction in you? What specific quality in them bothers you most? Could this quality exist in you in some form you've rejected? 2. What were you taught was unacceptable growing up? What parts of yourself did you learn to hide to be loved or accepted? 3. If your shadow could speak, what would it say it needs from you? Your practice. Shadow journaling. For the next 7 days, keep a shadow journal. Each evening, write down one moment when you felt triggered, annoyed, or judgmental toward someone. Ask yourself, what quality in them bothered me? Where might this quality exist in me? Write without censoring. The truth is, I actually am, have, want. End with, What if this quality, in healthy doses, could serve me? Remember, the goal isn't to become the extreme version you fear. It's to integrate these qualities in healthy, conscious ways. Shadow work doesn't make you bad. It makes you whole. Jung's wisdom. Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. If an inferiority is conscious, one always has a chance to correct it. But if it is repressed and isolated from consciousness, it never gets corrected. Moving forward, as you begin to recognize and integrate your shadow, you might feel uncomfortable or vulnerable. That's normal. You're learning to be human instead of perfect, real instead of acceptable. The people who truly matter will appreciate the more authentic you, and the ones who don't? They were probably loving your mask, not your truth. In our next story, we'll meet David, a man whose mask became so convincing, he forgot there was anyone underneath it at all. Chapter 2. The Man Who Never Said No. David Kim was the person everyone called when they needed something. Need someone to run the school bake sale? Call David. Extra shift nobody wants to cover? David's your guy. Help moving apartments on a Saturday? David will show up with his truck and a smile. At 42, he'd built an entire identity around being helpful. Reliable David. Nice David. David who never complains, never says no, never makes things difficult. His wife loved this about him. His boss depended on it. His neighbors praised it. And David told himself it made him a good person, better than his own father, who'd been selfish and absent, who'd cared only about himself. But lately David felt like he was disappearing. It started small, a heaviness in his chest when his phone buzzed with another request, a flash of resentment when his boss asked him to take on another project that wasn't his responsibility, a growing exhaustion that sleep couldn't fix. He told himself he was just tired. Everyone gets tired. Then his daughter said something that cracked his carefully constructed world wide open. It was a Thursday night, and David had just gotten home from volunteering at the community center, something he'd agreed to months ago and now regretted but couldn't figure out how to quit. His 17-year-old daughter, Sophie, was at the kitchen table doing homework. "Hey, honey," he said, setting down his keys. "How was your day?" "Fine." She didn't look up. "I was thinking maybe this weekend we could—" "Dad." Sophie finally met his eyes, and something in her expression made David's stomach drop. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, anything. Do you even have your own opinions, like, about anything?" David laughed, though it came out strangled. "What do you mean?" "I mean, whenever anyone asks you anything, you just say whatever they want to hear. It's like—" She struggled for words. "It's like you're not a real person. You're just this cardboard cutout of what everyone wants you to be." The words hit him like a physical blow. "Sophie, that's not—" "Last week, Mom asked if you wanted Italian or Chinese for dinner. You said, whatever you want. I asked if you liked my new jacket. You said, if you like it, honey. Your boss asks you to work late. You say yes. The neighbors ask you to watch their dog. You say yes. The school asks you to volunteer. You say yes." Her voice rose with each example. "When do you ever say what you actually want?" David opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No sound came out, because the terrifying truth was, he didn't know what he wanted. He genuinely had no idea. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "I just want to know who my dad actually is, because right now, I feel like I live with a ghost." She grabbed her backpack and went upstairs, leaving David standing alone in the kitchen, his heart pounding, his hands shaking. In the silence, a voice in his head whispered, "She's right. You are a ghost." David didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed next to his softly snoring wife and stared at the ceiling, Sophie's words playing on repeat. Cardboard cutout, not a real person, a ghost. How had this happened? When had he stopped being David and become just a collection of yeses? A service provider for everyone else's needs? He thought back to his childhood, his father storming through the house, demanding silence, demanding service, taking up all the space. His mother, small and accommodating, always saying, "Yes, honey, and whatever you want." And "It's fine, really." David had watched his father's selfishness destroy their family, and he'd made a vow he would be different. He would be thoughtful, considerate, helpful. He would be good, but somewhere along the way, good had become invisible. And now his own daughter couldn't see him because there was nothing to see. Friday morning, David went through his usual routine on autopilot. When his boss asked him to lead a weekend training session, David heard himself say, "Sure, no problem," even though he'd promised Sophie they'd go hiking. He texted Sophie, "Rain check on hiking?" Work thing came up. Her response was instant. Of course it did. David stared at the message, that heaviness in his chest now a crushing weight. At lunch, instead of eating at his desk like usual, he walked. He needed air. He needed space. He needed to not be needed for just 5 minutes. He found himself at the Meridian Cafe, a place he'd passed dozens of times but never entered because it looked like somewhere people lingered. And David never lingered anywhere. He had places to be, people to help, things to do. But today he walked in. The woman behind the counter, Elena, her name tag said, smiled warmly. "You look like you could use something stronger than coffee." David managed a weak smile. Is it that obvious? Only to people who've been there. She started making him something without asking what he wanted. "Rough day?" "Rough life, maybe." The words surprised him. Elena slid a cappuccino across the counter. "I made it with oat milk and cinnamon, but if you prefer something else, speak up." David reached for his wallet. "No, that's perfect." "Is it?" Elena's eyes held his. "Or is that just what you always say?" David froze, the question cutting right through him. Elena's expression softened. "I'm not trying to be harsh, but I've seen a lot of people come through here who've lost themselves. And they all have that same look you do, like they're apologizing for taking up space." David didn't know how to finish the sentence. "There's a woman who comes in here sometimes, Maya. She was just starting to figure out who she really is underneath all the armor. You two might understand each other." Elena nodded toward a corner table where a well-dressed woman sat, typing on her laptop, but looking more relaxed than her outfit suggested. "And there's a card on the community board. Therapy group, Thursdays, Dr. Sarah Chen. She's good at helping people find themselves again." David took his coffee, oat milk and cinnamon, which he realized he did actually like, and sat down. Not near Maya, but close enough to notice when she laughed at something on her screen. A real laugh, unguarded and imperfect. When was the last time he'd laughed like that? He pulled out his phone and looked at his calendar. Thursday nights were when he coached his neighbor's kids' soccer team. A commitment he'd made 6 months ago when asked, even though he didn't particularly enjoy soccer or working with kids who weren't his own. His finger hovered over the calendar event, and then, before he could talk himself out of it, he texted his neighbor. "Hey, I need to step down from coaching. Can't do it anymore. Sorry." His heart hammered. His palms sweated. It felt like he'd just committed murder. But it also felt like he could breathe a little easier. Thursday evening, David stood outside the Meridian Cafe, second-guessing everything. Inside, a small group was gathering in a back room. Through the window, he could see Maya from earlier in the week, and a few other people settling into chairs arranged in a circle. He could leave. No one would know. He could go back to coaching soccer, go back to saying yes, go back to being invisible. But Sophie's face flashed in his mind. "I just want to know who my dad actually is." David walked in. Dr. Sarah Chen had kind eyes and a direct manner that somehow felt gentle rather than harsh. The group was small, just 5 people, including Maya, who gave him a small, knowing nod. "Welcome," Dr. Chen said. "We're a Jungian-based therapy group. That means we focus on becoming conscious of the unconscious patterns that run our lives. We work with shadow, persona, complexes, all the parts of ourselves we've hidden or forgotten." She looked around the circle. "Anyone want to share what brought them here?" Maya spoke first. "I spent my whole life being perfect, and I almost destroyed someone because of it." Others shared. A young woman talked about her controlling mother. A man David's age mentioned feeling empty despite having everything. Then Dr. Chen's eyes landed on David. "And you?" David's throat felt tight. "My daughter said I'm not a real person. that I'm just a cardboard cutout, and she's right. The words hung in the air. Tell me about that, Dr. Chen said gently. And David did. Everything. The constant yeses. The inability to know his own preferences. The way he'd built an entire identity around being helpful but felt like he had no identity at all. What you're describing, Dr. Chen said, is what Jung called the persona. It's the social mask we wear, the acceptable face we show the world. Everyone has one. But David, you've made a common mistake. You've confused your persona with yourself. What do you mean? The persona is supposed to be a tool, something you use to navigate social situations. But it's not who you are. When we over-identify with the persona, when we start believing the mask is the face, we lose touch with our authentic self. She leaned forward. Tell me, who were you before you decided to be helpful, David? David opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I don't remember. Then that's where we start. We help you remember. Over the following weeks, Dr. Chen gave David assignments that felt impossible. Say no to 3 things this week. Doesn't matter what. Just practice the word. The first time, David said no to bringing dessert to a work potluck. He felt sick for hours afterward, certain everyone would hate him. They didn't notice. The second time, he said no to his wife's book club using their house for a meeting. Okay, she said, surprised but not angry. We'll go to Karen's instead. That was it. The world didn't end. The third time, his boss asked him to take on another project. I can't, David said, his voice barely above a whisper. My plate is full. His boss shrugged. Fair enough, I'll ask someone else. David sat at his desk, stunned. It had been that easy. But the real work was harder. Dr. Chen had him start asking himself questions throughout the day. What do I actually want for lunch? What movie would I choose if no one else's opinion mattered? What do I think about this situation? At first, the answers were blank spaces. But gradually, slowly, preferences began to emerge. He didn't like the oat milk cappuccinos. He actually preferred regular coffee, black. He didn't want to go to his in-laws every Sunday. He wanted to stay home and read. He didn't enjoy his job. He'd stayed in it for 12 years because it was stable, and his wife liked the benefits, but he actually hated it. These realizations were simultaneously liberating and terrifying. The turning point came 6 weeks later. His wife's family had invited them to Thanksgiving. As always, the assumption was that David and his family would host, a tradition that meant David spent the entire holiday cooking, serving, and cleaning while everyone else relaxed. The old David would have said yes automatically, but something had shifted. Actually, David said at dinner, his hands trembling slightly, we're not going to host this year. His wife stared at him. What? I don't want to. I've done it for 8 years, and I'm tired. Someone else can host. David, we can't just... Yes, we can. His voice was stronger now. We can say no. We can do what we want for once. Sophie, who'd been quiet through dinner, looked up at him with something like hope in her eyes. His wife's face went through several expressions, shock, irritation, confusion, before landing on something softer. You really don't want to host? I really don't. Okay. She nodded slowly. Okay, I'll tell them. That night, Sophie knocked on David's bedroom door after her mom had gone to sleep. Dad? Yeah, honey? I can see you now. Her eyes were wet. I don't know who you are yet, but at least I can see that someone's there. David pulled her into a hug, and for the first time in years, he felt solid, present, real. 3 months into the group, David showed up to therapy with an announcement. I quit my job, he said. The group went quiet. I gave my 2 weeks' notice yesterday. I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I know I can't keep doing something I hate just because it's safe. He looked at Dr. Chen. That's still wearing a mask, right? Just a different one. Dr. Chen smiled. That's exactly right. The persona isn't just about being nice. It's about living according to what's expected rather than what's true. Maya spoke up. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. And that's terrifying. David laughed, the sound surprised but genuine. But for the first time in my life, I'm making decisions based on what I actually want, not what everyone else needs from me. Even if what I want is just space to figure out what I want. A few weeks later, David was back at the Meridian Cafe. Elena handed him his usual, black coffee, no additions, and smiled. "You look different." "I feel different, lighter but also heavier somehow, like I'm more here." "That's what happens when you stop being a ghost." Elena wiped down the counter. "What's next for you?" "I'm thinking about woodworking. I used to love it as a kid, but I stopped because my dad said it wasn't practical." He shook his head. 30 years of doing what's practical, what's helpful, what everyone else wants. "I think it's time to do something just because I want to." "That sounds like a good enough reason to me." David took his coffee to a table by the window and pulled out a notebook, something else that was new. He'd started sketching furniture designs, letting his hands remember what they'd once loved to do. His phone buzzed, his mother, asking him to drive her to an appointment next week. The old David would have said yes immediately. The new David, the real David, looked at his calendar, saw he had plans with Sophie, and typed, "Can't next week. How about the week after?" He hit send before he could second-guess himself. And then he went back to his sketches, a small smile on his face, finally taking up space in his own life. Integration, understanding the persona. What is the persona? Carl Jung described the persona as the social mask we wear to navigate the world. It's the version of ourselves we present to others, at work, in social situations, with family. The persona itself isn't bad, it's necessary. We need different faces for different contexts. The problem arises when 1. We completely identify with the persona and forget it's a mask. 2. We have only one rigid persona for all situations. 3. We build a persona based entirely on others' expectations, rather than any authentic part of ourselves. When this happens, we become what Jung called identical with the persona. We lose contact with our genuine self and become a hollow performance of who we think we should be. How this showed up in David's story. David created a persona of helpful, agreeable, nice guy as a reaction to his selfish father. He wanted to be the opposite of what hurt him, but in trying to be only good, only helpful, only accommodating, he lost himself entirely. His persona became so dominant that he couldn't access his own preferences, opinions, or desires. He wasn't living, he was performing life. The wake-up call came when his daughter couldn't see the real person underneath the mask, because David himself had forgotten he was there. Reflection questions. 1. What persona do you wear most often? The competent professional? The easygoing friend? The selfless parent? The strong one who never needs help? 2. When did you first put this mask on? What were you protecting yourself from or trying to achieve? 3. Where in your life do you feel most like yourself? Where do you feel most like you're performing? Your practice. The what do I actually want? Exercise. For the next 7 days, ask yourself, what do I actually want? At least 5 times per day. What do I want for lunch? What do I want to do this evening? What do I think about what this person just said? What do I need right now? If no one else's opinion mattered, what would I choose? Write down your answers, even if they're I don't know. Notice where you have immediate clarity and where you draw a blank. The blank spaces show where your persona has been speaking instead of your authentic self. Then, pick one small thing each day where you act on what you actually want, even if it disappoints someone else's expectations. Jung's wisdom. The persona is a complicated system of relations between individual consciousness and society. Fittingly enough, a kind of mask, designed on the one hand to make a definite impression upon others, and on the other to conceal the true nature of the individual. Moving forward, dismantling an overdeveloped persona is unsettling. People around you may react to the changes, some with support, others with resistance. They were comfortable with your mask because it served their needs. Your authenticity might challenge them. This is okay. People who love the real you will adjust. People who only loved what you did for them will fall away. This is part of becoming whole. Remember, you're not becoming selfish by having boundaries and preferences. You're becoming real. There's a massive difference between the selfishness that harms others and the self-awareness that honors your truth while still being kind. In our next story, we'll meet Aisha, a young woman trapped by invisible chains, unable to step into her own life because a complex from her past keeps pulling her backward. Chapter 3. The Daughter Who Couldn't Leave. Aisha Patel was 26 years old and still asking permission to live her life. Not explicitly. She was a graduate student in neuroscience, capable and intelligent. But every major decision still ran through the filter of her parents' approval. Every choice was weighed against their expectations. Every opportunity was measured by whether it would disappoint them. Most recently, the job offer. Stanford. Full-ride PhD program with a research assistantship studying neural plasticity. Her dream topic with her dream advisor. The email had arrived 3 weeks ago, and Aisha still hadn't responded. Because it was in California, and her parents were in Boston, and the thought of telling her mother made Aisha's chest tighten until she couldn't breathe. "You're being ridiculous," her roommate Jen said, scrolling through her phone while Aisha paced their tiny apartment. "It's Stanford. Stanford. People would kill for this." "I know, so accept it." "I will. I just need to talk to my parents first." "You're 26, not 16. You don't need their permission." But that was exactly the problem. Aisha did need it. Not legally, but psychologically, she was completely incapable of making this decision without their blessing. And she already knew she wouldn't get it. Sunday dinner at her parents' house was a weekly ritual Aisha had never missed. Not during finals. Not when she was sick. Not ever. Her mother, Priya, had made all of Aisha's favorites. Saag paneer, garlic naan, mango lassi. The apartment smelled like home, like love, like guilt. "Beta, you look thin," her mother said the moment Aisha walked in, already touching her face, her shoulders, as if searching for proof of neglect. "Are you eating? You work too hard." "I'm fine, Mama." "She's never fine when we're not there to take care of her," her mother said to her father, who nodded from his armchair, barely looking up from his newspaper. They sat down to eat, and Aisha felt the words building in her throat like a trapped scream. "Just say it. Just tell them." "How is your research going?" her father asked. "Good. Really good, actually. I've been getting some interesting results on synaptic pruning and—" "But you'll be done soon, yes? Then you can get a proper job. Maybe at the hospital here. I talked to Dr. Gupta, and he said they're always looking for researchers." "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about that." Aisha's hands trembled slightly. "I got accepted to a PhD program." Her mother's face lit up. "Beta, that's wonderful! Where? Harvard? MIT? You could stay right here." "Stanford." The light went out like someone had flipped a switch. "California." Her mother's voice went up an octave. "California? That's across the country." "It's one of the best programs in the world for my field." "There are good programs here." Her father finally put down his newspaper, his voice stern. "Why do you need to go so far? What's wrong with staying near family?" "Nothing's wrong with it, I just—" "After everything we've done for you," her mother interrupted, her eyes already filling with tears. "We came to this country with nothing, nothing. We worked so hard so you could have opportunities, and this is how you repay us? By abandoning us?" "I'm not abandoning you." "You might as well be. Who will take care of us when we're old? Who will be here when we need you?" Her mother was crying now, full tears streaming down her face. "Your father has a bad heart. What if something happens? What if he has an attack and you're in California?" Guilt crashed over Aisha like a wave, pulling her under. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the crushing weight of being a bad daughter, a selfish daughter, an ungrateful daughter. "I haven't accepted yet," she heard herself say. "I just wanted to tell you about it." "Good," her father said, returning to his newspaper. "Because you're not going." Aisha barely remembered leaving her parents' house. She found herself walking aimlessly through the city, her phone buzzing with texts from her mother. "I can't believe you would even consider this. After everything we've sacrificed, you're breaking your father's heart. Call me when you're ready to apologize." She ended up at the Meridian Cafe without quite knowing how she got there. It was getting late, but through the window she could see it was still open, warm light spilling onto the dark street. Inside, there were only a few people left. A man sat in the corner working on what looked like furniture sketches. David, though Aisha didn't know his name yet. And behind the counter was Elena, wiping down tables with the unhurried grace of someone who had all the time in the world. "We're about to close," Elena said gently, "but you look like you need somewhere to sit for a minute." "I'm sorry, I'll go." "I said we're about to close. I didn't say you had to leave." Elena smiled and gestured to a chair. "Sit. I'll make you some chai." Aisha sat, and something about Elena's kindness cracked her open. The tears came before she could stop them. Silent, relentless, the kind that come from a place too deep for sound. Elena brought the chai and sat down across from her, saying nothing. Just present. Just there. Finally, Aisha managed to speak. "I can't do it." "Can't do what?" "Leave. Grow up. Live my own life. I'm 26 years old, and I still feel like a child when I'm around my parents." "Tell me what happened." And Aisha did, all of it. The job offer, the Sunday dinner, her mother's tears, the guilt that felt like drowning. Elena listened, her face thoughtful. "Can I tell you something? There's a woman who comes here, Trish. She's working on a book about starting over after loss. She might understand what you're going through, the fear of disappointing people, of changing the story they have for you." Elena paused. "But more than that, I think you need to talk to someone who can help you understand why your mother's tears have so much power over you." "Because I love her, because I don't want to hurt her. Maybe. Or maybe because when you were little, her emotional reactions became the most important thing in your world. More important than your own needs. More important than your own life." Elena's voice was gentle but direct. "That's not love, Aisha. That's a cage you learned to build for yourself." Dr. Sarah Chen's Thursday group had become something of a lifeline for the small group of people who attended. Maya was there, noticeably more relaxed than she'd been weeks ago. David, working on his furniture sketches before the session started. And now Aisha, sitting nervously in a chair that felt too big for her. "Welcome, Aisha," Dr. Chen said. "Would you like to share what brought you here?" Aisha took a shaky breath. "I can't leave my parents, and I need to, but I can't." "Tell me about that feeling. When you think about leaving, what happens in your body?" "I feel like I'm 6 years old again, small, terrified, like if I make them angry or sad, something terrible will happen." Dr. Chen nodded knowingly. "What you're experiencing is what Jung called a complex, specifically a mother complex. Would you like to understand what that means?" "Please." A complex is an emotionally charged cluster of thoughts, feelings, and memories centered around a particular theme, usually formed in childhood. When the complex is triggered, you don't respond from your present-day adult self. You respond from the wounded child who originally formed the pattern. Dr. Chen leaned forward. "Tell me about your mother when you were young." Aisha closed her eyes, memories flooding back. "She was intense, loving but overwhelming. When I did something she approved of, I was her perfect daughter. But when I disappointed her, she would cry. She'd say things like, 'You're killing me,' or 'After all I've done for you.' She'd get migraines and have to lie down in the dark. And I always knew, that I had caused it." "How old were you when you learned this?" "I don't know, 5, 6, it just always was." "So you learned that your mother's emotional state was your responsibility, that your own needs and desires were dangerous because they might hurt her. And the only way to keep her, and yourself, safe was to be perfect, compliant, and never leave." Aisha felt tears streaming down her face. "Yes. Here's what's important to understand. Your mother might still react emotionally when you make independent choices. But the terror you feel, that's not about now. That's about then. It's your 6-year-old self, still believing that mom's tears mean the world will end. That's the complex talking." David spoke up quietly from across the circle. "How do you tell the difference between the complex and reality?" "Great question. The complex has specific signatures: sudden regression, feeling much younger, disproportionate emotional response, physical symptoms like can't breathe, can't think, and most importantly, feeling like you have no choice, like you're helpless." Dr. Chen looked at Aisha. Does that sound familiar? That's exactly how I feel every time. The work, then, is learning to recognize when your complex is activated, to pause, to separate the past from the present, to respond from your adult self rather than your wounded child self. Over the next few weeks, Dr. Chen taught Aisha what she called the pause protocol. Step 1. Notice. When you feel that familiar terror, that regression, that helplessness, name it. My mother complex is activated. Step 2. Breathe. Create physical space between the trigger and your response. Count to 10. Feel your feet on the ground. Remember you're an adult, not a child. Step 3. Reality check. Ask yourself, am I actually in danger right now, or does it just feel like I am? Separate past fear from present reality. Step 4. Respond from your adult self. Not from the wounded child who learned to appease. From the capable adult who can handle her mother's emotions without making them her responsibility. Aisha practiced with small things first, staying late at the lab when her mother called instead of rushing home, declining a Sunday dinner to work on a paper. Each time, her mother's reactions were predictable. Tears, guilt, after all I've done. And each time Aisha practiced the pause protocol. At first, it barely worked. The complex was too strong, the patterns too deep. But gradually, painfully, slowly, she started to feel the difference between then and now, between her mother's actual emotions and her own internalized terror. The turning point came 6 weeks after Aisha joined the group. She was having dinner with her parents when her mother brought up Dr. Gupta's job offer again. He asked about you today. Such a nice position, right here in Boston. You could live at home, save money. I'm not taking that job, Mama. Her mother's face changed instantly. What do you mean you're not taking it? Here it was, the moment. Aisha felt her heart racing, her hands trembling, that familiar 6-year-old terror rising up. Notice, my complex is activated. Breathe. I'm 26. I'm safe. I'm an adult. Reality check. Her disappointment won't kill me. Or her. I mean, I'm going to Stanford. I've already accepted. The explosion was immediate. Her mother started crying, deep, heaving sobs. How could you do this to us? We're your parents. We need you. Her father's face went red. This is unacceptable. We forbid it. And here was the crucial moment. The old Aisha would have crumbled, would have apologized, backtracked, made herself small to make them comfortable. But the new Aisha, or perhaps the real Aisha, finally emerging, took a breath and spoke from her adult self. I know you're upset. I know this isn't what you wanted for me. But this is my life, and I'm choosing to live it. Her voice shook, but held steady. I love you both, but I can't stay small to make you comfortable anymore. If you do this, her mother said through tears, don't expect us to support you. I'm not asking you to support it. I'm just asking you to accept that it's happening. Her father stood up. I think you should leave. Aisha gathered her things, her whole body shaking, tears streaming down her face. But underneath the terror, underneath the guilt, there was something else. Freedom. The next few weeks were awful. Her mother wouldn't return her calls. Her father sent terse one-line texts. The guilt was overwhelming, waves of it that made Aisha question everything. But in therapy group, surrounded by people who were fighting their own battles for authenticity, she found the strength to keep going. The complex wants you to go back, Dr. Chen reminded her. It wants you to make yourself small again because that feels safe. But Aisha, you're teaching your nervous system something new. That you can handle your mother's disappointment. That it won't kill you. That you're allowed to live your own life. Maya, who'd been listening quietly, spoke up. My grandmother told me that being a good person meant being perfect. It took me years to realize that was a lie. Maybe your parents' version of being a good daughter is also a lie. What's the truth then? Aisha asked. That you can love them and still leave. That honoring your parents doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. That being a good daughter might actually mean becoming who you're meant to be, even if it disappoints them. 3 months later, Aisha was packing for California. Her apartment was full of boxes, her future compressed into labeled containers. Her phone rang. Her mother. Aisha's heart jumped. That complex, always ready to activate. She took a breath. Notice, breathe, reality check, respond from adult self. Hello, Mama. Beta. Her mother's voice was quieter than usual. Your father and we want to take you to dinner before you leave. Okay. We're still not happy about this. I know. But we're trying to understand that this is what you need to do. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't acceptance. But it was something. Thank you, Mama. After they hung up, Aisha sat among her boxes and cried. But this time, the tears were different. Not the helpless tears of a trapped child, but the bittersweet tears of someone stepping into their own life. On her last day in Boston, Aisha stopped by the Meridian Cafe. Elena was there, as always, wiping down the espresso machine. So, Elena said with a smile, California. California, Aisha smiled back. I'm terrified. Good. That means you're doing something real. Elena poured her a chai. On the house. You know what the bravest thing you did was? Not leaving. It was staying conscious while you did it. Not running away from your family, but walking toward yourself. It still hurts. It probably always will, a little. That's the price of freedom. But Aisha, you're free. You're not a child anymore. You're not your mother's emotional support animal. You're just you. Finally. Aisha raised her chai cup. To finally? To finally, Elena echoed. As Aisha left the cafe, she saw the note still pinned to the community board. You are not who you think you are. You are not who they told you to be. But you could be who you truly are. She smiled, pulled out a pen, and wrote beneath it. I'm finding out, finally. Integration, understanding complexes. What are complexes? Jung discovered that our psyche contains emotionally charged clusters of thoughts, feelings, and memories centered around specific themes, usually formed in childhood. These are complexes. When triggered, a complex takes over our consciousness, causing us to react from a much younger version of ourselves rather than from our present adult capacity. Common complexes include mother-father complex, patterns formed around our early relationships with parents. Inferiority complex, feeling fundamentally less than others. Power complex, needing to dominate or control to feel safe. Authority complex, automatic rebellion against or submission to authority figures. The key insight: when a complex is activated, you're not in the present moment anymore. You've been hijacked by the past. How this showed up in Aisha's story. Aisha had a mother complex formed when she learned, as a very young child, that her mother's emotional state was her responsibility. Her mother used tears and guilt as tools of control, likely unconsciously, and Aisha internalized the belief that her own needs and desires were dangerous. When triggered, Aisha would regress to feeling like a helpless 6-year-old, despite being a capable 26-year-old scientist. The complex made her mother's disappointment feel life-threatening, even though objectively it wasn't. Reflection questions. 1. When do you suddenly feel much younger, small, helpless, or trapped? What situations consistently trigger this feeling? 2. What patterns from your childhood keep repeating in your adult life? Always picking the wrong partners, freezing around authority figures, unable to accept praise. 3. Who in your life has disproportionate power over your emotional state? Whose approval do you still desperately need? Your practice, the pause protocol. When you feel a complex being triggered, sudden regression, overwhelming emotion, feeling helpless, or notice, name it aloud or in your mind. My mother, father, inferiority, etc. complex is activated right now. 2. Breathe. Take 5 deep breaths. Feel your feet on the ground. Look around and notice 5 things you can see. Anchor yourself in the present. 3. Reality check. Ask yourself, oh, how old do I feel right now? Oh, am I actually in danger, or does it just feel that way? Oh, what would my adult self say about this situation? Oh, what's actually true right now versus what feels true from my past? 4. Respond from your adult self. Make a conscious choice about how to respond rather than reacting automatically from the complex. You might still feel young and scared, but you can act from adult wisdom anyway. Practice this daily. even with small triggers. Over time, you'll create new neural pathways that allow you to respond from the present rather than react from the past. Jung's wisdom. A complex can be really overcome only if it is lived out to the full. In other words, if we are to develop further, we have to draw to us and drink down to the very dregs what, because of our complexes, we have held at a distance. Moving forward, complexes don't disappear completely. They're part of your psychological structure, but they can lose their power over you. The goal isn't to never feel triggered, but to recognize when you're triggered and choose your response consciously. People in your life may resist your healing. If your mother complex kept you compliant, your mother might unconsciously work to reactivate it when you start setting boundaries. This isn't malicious, it's just that the system wants to maintain homeostasis. Stay conscious. Keep practicing the pause protocol. Remember, you can honor your past while refusing to be imprisoned by it. In our next story, we'll meet Marcus, a man whose inner images of love keep sabotaging his chance at real connection. Chapter 4. The Lover Who Kept Choosing Wrong. Marcus Chen knew he had a type. Artistic, intense, emotionally unpredictable. The kind of woman who could light up a room with her laughter one moment and disappear into darkness the next. The kind who lived on the edge of chaos, creating beauty out of turbulence. The kind who always broke his heart. At 38, Marcus had dated a painter who threw his belongings out a window during an argument. A musician who maxed out his credit cards funding her tour that never happened. A dancer who left him for her ex-boyfriend 3 times before disappearing to Bali without a word. And now, most recently, Sienna. Sienna, the actress, with her wild red hair and unpredictable moods, who could make him feel like the most important person in the universe one day and completely invisible the next. They'd been together for 8 months before she ended it, dramatically, publicly at his firm's holiday party, because he was too stable, too boring, too safe. "You're like beige wallpaper," she'd said, loud enough for his colleagues to hear. "Beautiful architecture on the outside, nothing interesting on the inside." That was 3 weeks ago, and Marcus still felt gutted. "You attract crazy women," his friend Tom said over beers. "That's your problem." But Marcus's sister Sarah, Dr. Sarah Chen, had a different theory. "You don't attract them, Marcus. You choose them, and you choose them for a reason." She set down her wine glass, her therapist face on. "When are you going to do the work?" "What work?" "The work of figuring out why you keep seeking the same type of woman and expecting different results. That's not bad luck. That's a pattern. And patterns mean something." Marcus had laughed it off. But 3 weeks later, still unable to sleep, still checking Sienna's Instagram for signs of her new life without him, he couldn't shake his sister's words. Patterns mean something. Saturday afternoon, Marcus found himself at the Meridian Cafe, a place Sarah had mentioned when she talked about her therapy group. He wasn't ready for therapy, but he needed to get out of his apartment before he texted Sienna for the 100th time. The cafe was busier than he expected. A woman was working intently on her laptop, looking more relaxed than her designer clothes suggested. A middle-aged man was sketching furniture designs in a corner. And behind the counter was Elena, who seemed to have a 6th sense for broken hearts. "First time here?" she asked as Marcus approached. "Yeah, my sister recommended it." "Sarah Chen?" Elena smiled. "She's good people. You must be Marcus." "She talks about me?" "Only when you're breaking your own heart again." Elena started making him an espresso without asking. "Let me guess. Another intense, artistic woman who made you feel alive until she made you feel dead." Marcus stared at her. "How did you—" "Because you have the look. The why do I keep doing this to myself look." She slid the espresso across the counter. "Want to know the real question you should be asking?" "What?" "Not why do they keep hurting me, but what am I looking for in them that I can't find in myself?" The words hit Marcus like cold water. "I don't understand." "You will, if you're brave enough to look." Elena nodded toward a table where the man with the furniture sketches sat. "That's David. He just finished figuring out who he is underneath who everyone wanted him to be. Painful work, but he's on the other side now. You might want to talk to him." I don't need... The therapy group meets Thursday nights, 7 p.m. You should come. Elena's eyes were kind but direct. Because Marcus, if you don't understand this pattern, you're going to keep repeating it until it destroys you. Marcus didn't go to the Thursday group. He told himself he didn't need therapy, that he just needed time, that the next woman would be different. But 2 weeks later, he found himself on a dating app, swiping. And there she was, Luna, dark eyeliner, nose ring, profile full of moody artistic photos and poetry quotes. He could practically feel the chaos radiating through the screen. He swiped right. They matched instantly. Their first date was at an underground art gallery, her choice. She showed up 20 minutes late in a vintage dress and combat boots, unapologetic about her tardiness. She talked about her photography, her installation art, how she was too much for most men. Marcus was captivated. By the end of the night, they were kissing in an alley behind the gallery, and Marcus felt that familiar intoxication, the thrill of something unpredictable, something dangerous, something that made his carefully controlled life feel suddenly, vibrantly alive. "You're different," she said, touching his face. "Most architects are so boring, but you have depths." He drove home feeling like he was floating, already imagining their future together. By date 3, Luna was talking about moving in with him. By date 5, she was having screaming arguments with her ex over the phone while Marcus waited awkwardly in his car. By date 7, she borrowed $500 for materials for her art show that Marcus was beginning to suspect didn't exist. And yet he couldn't walk away, because when it was good, when Luna looked at him with those intense eyes and told him he was the only one who understood her, Marcus felt like he mattered, like he was special, like he was more than the stable, boring architect who did everything right and felt nothing at all. The breaking point came on a Thursday. Luna had promised to meet him for dinner, a nice restaurant he'd reserved weeks in advance. He waited for an hour. She didn't show, didn't call, didn't text. He paid for the wine he'd ordered and left, humiliated. At home, he finally got a text. "Sorry, babe. Got caught up in my creative flow. You understand, right? You're always so understanding." And something in Marcus snapped. No. He didn't understand. He was tired of understanding. Tired of making excuses for people who treated him like an afterthought. Tired of feeling like the boring beige wallpaper that women used as a backdrop for their dramatic lives. He looked at his phone and saw his sister's last text from weeks ago. Thursday group. 7 p.m. Come when you're ready. It was 6:45. Marcus grabbed his keys. The back room of the Meridian Cafe felt intimate, almost sacred. 5 people sat in a circle. Maya, who gave him a small nod of recognition from the cafe. David, who smiled warmly. Aisha, who looked nervous but present. And 2 others he didn't know. Sarah's face showed surprise when Marcus walked in, but also something like relief. "Everyone, this is my brother Marcus. Marcus, welcome." He sat down, feeling awkward and exposed. "Would you like to share what brought you here?" Sarah asked gently, not as his sister, but as his therapist. Marcus took a breath. "I keep dating the same woman. Different faces, same person. And I don't know why I keep doing it." "Tell me about her," Sarah said. "This same woman. Artistic, passionate, unpredictable, emotionally intense. The kind of person who makes me feel like I'm finally alive instead of just existing." He paused. "And the kind who eventually makes me feel completely invisible." "What do you do for work?" "I'm an architect. Commercial buildings mostly. It's stable, practical, pays well." "Do you enjoy it?" The question caught Marcus off guard. It's fine. It's a good job." "That's not what I asked." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "No, I don't enjoy it. I wanted to be an artist when I was younger. I loved painting, sculpture, creating things just for the beauty of it. But my parents, our parents," he glanced at Sarah, "they said art wasn't practical, not for someone like me. So I chose architecture, the practical version of creativity." "So you chose safety," Sarah said, "and now you date danger." "What?" "Marcus, What if the women you're drawn to aren't just random? What if they represent everything you gave up to be practical, stable, and safe? The spontaneity, the passion, the artistic soul. The part of you that doesn't care what's practical or responsible. Maya spoke up from across the circle. It's like projection, right? When we can't accept parts of ourselves, we see them in other people. Exactly, Sarah said. Jung called it anima projection, the idealized inner image of the feminine that men carry, shaped by their early experiences and unmet needs. When a man hasn't developed his own emotional depth, creativity, or spontaneity, he often projects these qualities onto women. He falls in love not with the actual person, but with what she represents, the parts of himself he's disowned. Marcus felt like the room was tilting. So you're saying, I don't actually love these women? I'm just using them? Not consciously, but yes, in a way. You're seeking them to carry the qualities you won't develop in yourself, the chaos you won't allow, the passion you won't express, the creativity you abandoned, the aliveness you gave up for stability. But I'm not like them. I'm not chaotic or unpredictable or… No, Sarah interrupted gently. You're repressed. You've cut yourself off from your own emotional spontaneity, your own creativity, your own capacity to be too much. So you seek women who embody all of it. But Marcus, no one can carry those qualities for you forever. Eventually, the projection collapses, and you're left with a real person who can't possibly live up to your idealized image. David leaned forward. What would happen if you let yourself be a little chaotic, a little passionate, a little unpredictable? I don't know, Marcus said honestly. I don't know how. Then that's where you start, Sarah said. Over the next few weeks, Sarah gave Marcus assignments that felt terrifying. Paint something. I don't care if it's good, just paint. Marcus bought cheap supplies and stood in front of a blank canvas in his pristine apartment for an hour, paralyzed. Everything he imagined felt stupid, childish, not good enough. Finally, he just threw paint at the canvas, literally threw it. Red, blue, gold, colors splashing across white, making a mess, creating chaos. It was ugly and liberating. Take an improv class. Marcus showed up to the class feeling like an imposter among 20-somethings who were loud and unself-conscious and willing to look stupid. The exercises forced him to be spontaneous, to say yes to whatever came, to stop controlling every moment. He was terrible at it, and something in him started to thaw. Cancel plans you don't want to do. Do something impulsive instead. Marcus canceled a work dinner and went to a jazz club alone. He stayed out until 2 a.m., something he hadn't done in years. He felt reckless and alive. Stop texting Luna. Block her number if you have to. Sit with the emptiness. This was the hardest one. Without Luna, without the drama, the intensity, the constant emotional turbulence, Marcus felt hollow, boring, beige. But in therapy group, Sarah pushed him further. That emptiness is what you've been running from. It's the space where your real self should be. You've been letting other people fill it because you're afraid of what you'll find if you look inside. What if there's nothing there? Marcus asked quietly. There's always something there. You just haven't looked. 3 months into the work, Marcus was painting in his apartment, now filled with canvases in various states of completion, when he realized he hadn't thought about Luna in days. More than that, he'd been on a coffee date with someone new, Caroline. She was a high school teacher, practical and grounded, with a quiet sense of humor. She wasn't chaotic or dramatic. She didn't make him feel like he was drowning in intensity. And he'd almost ended the date early because she felt too normal. But then he'd remembered Sarah's words. You're not looking for normal. You're looking for real. So he'd stayed. And by the end, he'd realized something. Caroline was interesting, not because she was performing intensity, but because she was genuinely present. She asked him questions and listened to the answers. She laughed at his jokes without making everything about her emotions. She was just herself. They'd made plans for a second date. At Thursday group, Marcus shared this. I almost self-sabotaged it. I almost convinced myself she was boring because she wasn't chaotic. But you didn't, Sarah said. What stopped you? I asked myself, What am I looking for in her that I could develop in myself instead? And I realized nothing. I didn't need her to be wild or artistic or spontaneous, because I'm starting to be those things myself. I'm painting. I'm taking risks. I'm allowing myself to be imperfect. He paused. I think I actually just wanted to get to know her. The real her, not what she represents. Maya smiled. That's huge, Marcus. It feels weird, uncomfortable, like dating without the fireworks. That's because you're experiencing actual intimacy instead of projection, Sarah said. You're seeing another person instead of your own unmet needs reflected back at you. It's supposed to feel different. Aisha, who'd been quiet, spoke up. Is it still love if it's not intense? That's the thing we all have to learn, Sarah replied. Intensity isn't intimacy. Drama isn't passion. Real love is actually quieter, less chaotic, but infinitely deeper. 6 months later, Marcus was still seeing Caroline. It wasn't a whirlwind romance. There were no screaming fights or dramatic reconciliations. She didn't borrow money or disappear for days or make him feel like he was rescuing her from chaos. Instead, they cooked dinner together, went hiking, had long conversations about books and teaching methods and his architecture projects. She met his friends. He met her family. It was steady, stable, real, and Marcus was painting more than ever. Not for anyone else, but for himself. Wild, messy canvases that he didn't try to control. Some were terrible, some were actually good. All of them were his. One evening at the Meridian Cafe, Elena smiled at him knowingly. You look different. I feel different. Found what you were looking for? Yeah. Turns out it was in me the whole time. Marcus laughed. That sounds like a greeting card, but it's true. The best truths usually sound like greeting cards. Doesn't make them less true. Elena handed him his espresso. So, you still dating the teacher? Yeah, it's good. Really good. And the weirdest part? I don't miss the drama. I thought I would, but I don't. That's because you're not using her to feel alive anymore. You're already alive. Marcus took his espresso to a table and pulled out his sketchbook. Not for work, but for a new painting he was planning. As he sketched, he thought about Sienna, about Luna, about all the women before them. He didn't hate them. He didn't even blame them. They'd just been mirrors, showing him what he'd refused to see in himself. And now that he was really looking at his own reflection, he was finally starting to like what he saw. Integration, understanding anima and animus. What are anima and animus? Jung proposed that within each person exists an inner image of the opposite, or complementary gender. For men, this is the anima, the idealized feminine. For women, it's the animus, the idealized masculine. These images are shaped by early relationships, especially with parents, cultural conditioning, and unmet psychological needs. The anima animus serves important functions. It connects us to our unconscious. It holds qualities we haven't developed in ourselves. It shapes whom we're attracted to. The problem arises when we project this inner image onto real people. We fall in love not with who someone actually is, but with what they represent to us psychologically. How this showed up in Marcus's story. Marcus sacrificed his artistic, spontaneous, passionate self to become practical and stable, the good son who didn't chase impractical dreams. But those qualities didn't disappear. They went into his anima projection. He repeatedly fell for women who embodied everything he denied in himself: chaos, creativity, emotional intensity, spontaneity. He was unconsciously seeking them to carry these qualities for him, rather than developing them himself. The relationships always failed because 1. No real person can live up to an idealized projection. 2. He was in love with what they represented, not who they actually were. 3. He remained incomplete, seeking completion through others. Reflection questions. 1. What qualities do you consistently seek in romantic partners? Strong, nurturing, spontaneous, intellectual, emotionally expressive. 2. Which of those qualities exist in you but underdeveloped? What would it mean to cultivate them yourself rather than seeking them in others? 3. Think of your perfect partner. If you developed all those qualities yourself, Would you still need to find them in someone else? Your practice, anima-animus dialogue. This is an active imagination exercise to connect with your inner image. 1. Create the space. Find a quiet place. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. 2. Call forth the image. Invite your anima or animus to appear. Don't force it. Let an image arise naturally. It might be a specific person, a composite, or an archetypal figure. 3. Engage in dialogue. Ask questions. Oh, what do you want me to know? Oh, what quality do you represent that I need to develop? Oh, why do I keep seeking you in others? 4. Listen without judgment. Let the answers come without censoring them. Write down what emerges. 5. Take action. Identify one quality your anima-animus represents. This week, practice embodying it yourself. If they represent creativity, create something. If they represent spontaneity, do something unplanned. If they represent emotional depth, feel your feelings without suppressing them. For men specifically, develop your anima by connecting with your emotions, not just thoughts, embracing creativity and intuition, allowing yourself to be receptive, not just active, exploring the arts, nature, and your inner life. For women specifically, develop your animus by taking decisive action on your own behalf, speaking your truth without softening it, developing your intellect and convictions, setting boundaries and wielding healthy power. Jung's wisdom. The meeting with oneself is, at first, the meeting with one's own shadow. The shadow is a tight passage, a narrow door, whose painful constriction no one is spared who goes down to the deep well. But one must learn to know oneself in order to know who one is. Moving forward, integration of the anima-animus is lifelong work. You're not trying to become androgynous or erase gender differences. You're trying to become whole, embodying both masculine and feminine qualities in ways that feel authentic to you. When you do this work, your relationships transform. You stop seeking completion and start seeking companionship. You can appreciate someone for who they are, rather than what they represent. The intensity may be less, but the intimacy is far greater. In our final story, all paths converge. We'll return to Elena and discover the journey that brought her and all these seekers to the Meridian Cafe. Chapter 5. The Circle Closes. Elena Martinez wiped down the espresso machine with the same meditative care she brought to everything at the Meridian Cafe. 20 years she'd owned this place. 20 years of watching people walk in broken and walk out beginning to heal. But tonight was different. Tonight was the anniversary of the day Elena's own life had shattered, and the day it had begun to come back together. She looked at the small group gathering in the back room for Thursday therapy. Maya, laughing with David about something. Aisha, looking lighter than she had months ago, her California move just weeks away. Marcus, sketching in his notebook, no longer seeking salvation in chaos. And Dr. Sarah Chen, setting up chairs with the quiet confidence of someone who knew how to hold space for transformation. Sarah caught Elena's eye and smiled. Ready? Elena took a breath, as I'll ever be. 20 years ago, Elena had been Dr. Elena Martinez, one of the most sought-after Jungian analysts in Boston. Her practice was full. Her reputation was sterling. People waited months to get on her schedule. She was also dying inside. The work had consumed her. Every day she absorbed other people's pain, held their shadows, guided them through their darkest places. And slowly, imperceptibly, she'd stopped tending to her own darkness. Her marriage had crumbled. Her husband tired of competing with her clients for her attention. Her friendships had withered. She ate meals at her desk between sessions. She dreamed other people's dreams and forgot her own. You're burning out, her supervisor had warned. You need to slow down. But Elena couldn't slow down, because if she stopped moving, stopped helping, stopped being needed, who was she? The breaking point came on a Tuesday. She was in session with a client, a woman struggling with severe depression, when suddenly Elena couldn't breathe. The room spun. Her heart raced. She excused herself, barely made it to the bathroom, and collapsed on the floor, gasping. Panic attack, the ER doctor said later. Severe burnout, possibly depression. Elena, who helped others through their psychological crises, was having one of her own. She took a leave of absence, 1 month, she told her clients. Just 1 month to rest. But 1 month became 3, then 6, then a year. Because once Elena stopped running, she had to face what she'd been running from. She had no idea who she was outside of being a therapist. Her entire identity was wrapped up in helping others. Her persona, the capable analyst, the wise healer, the one with all the answers, had become her prison. Underneath, emptiness, exhaustion, a woman who'd given everything to everyone else and had nothing left for herself. "I need help," she'd finally admitted to her own therapist, a colleague she'd referred clients to for years but never thought she'd need herself. "What kind of help?" Dr. James Forrester asked gently. "I don't know who I am anymore, or maybe I never knew." And so began Elena's own journey through the underworld. She worked with her shadow. All the resentment she'd never acknowledged toward demanding clients, all the anger at being needed constantly, all the parts of herself she'd sacrificed to be the perfect healer. She confronted her savior complex, the unconscious belief that her worth depended on rescuing others, that she could only be loved if she was useful. She examined her persona, the wise, compassionate therapist who never struggled, never broke down, never needed help herself. And she realized it was a mask she'd worn so long, she'd forgotten there was a face underneath. She sat with the emptiness, the depression, the grief of all the years she'd spent being who others needed instead of who she was. It was the hardest work of her life, and slowly, painfully, gradually, something new began to emerge. 3 years into her own analysis, Elena made a decision. She wasn't going back to private practice. The thought of sitting in that office, holding that much pain again, made her physically ill. But she also wasn't done with healing work. It was too much a part of her. She needed something different, something less formal, a space where healing could happen organically, where she wasn't the expert but rather a fellow traveler. She found a space that would become the Meridian Cafe on a morning walk. It was run down, abandoned, perfect. She bought it with money from selling her practice and spent 6 months renovating it herself, physical labor that felt grounding after so many years of just sitting and listening. When it opened, people came for coffee. But Elena, being Elena, she couldn't help but see them, really see them. The woman whose perfectionism was killing her slowly. The man who'd lost himself trying to please everyone. The young woman trapped by family expectations. She didn't offer therapy. She offered presence, a kind word, sometimes a gentle question that opened something inside them. And slowly, the Meridian Cafe became what she'd needed it to be, a threshold space, a place where people could stop running and start remembering who they were. 5 years in, Elena met Sarah Chen at a conference. Sarah was just starting her practice, young and idealistic and full of fire about Jungian work. They talked for hours about individuation, about healing, about the sacred responsibility of holding space for transformation. "I'd like to start a group," Sarah said. "Something small, deep work. But I need a space that feels safe, not clinical." Elena smiled. "I might have just the place." And so the Thursday group was born. Over the years, dozens of people had passed through that back room at the Meridian Cafe. Some stayed for months, some for years. All of them changed. Elena never joined the group officially. She was the cafe owner, the one who made coffee and offered wisdom from behind the counter. The threshold guardian, Sarah called her. The one who helped people recognize they were ready for the journey. But tonight, on the 20th anniversary of her breakdown-turned-breakthrough, Sarah had asked her to share her story with the group. "They need to know," Sarah had said. "They need to see that even the helpers need help, that even the wise ones had to learn wisdom through suffering." So Elena had agreed. The group settled into their circle, 5 seekers and 1 guide, all of them looking at Elena with curious eyes as she sat in the chair Sarah had placed for her. "Elena's going to share her story tonight," Sarah began. "Many of you have wondered about her. This wise woman who seems to know exactly what you need before you know it yourself. But Elena wasn't born wise. She was forged by fire just like all of us." Elena took a breath and began. She told them everything. The burnout, the panic attack, the years of therapy unpacking who she'd become, versus who she actually was. The slow, painful process of individuation, becoming whole instead of just helpful. "I thought my purpose was to save people," she said quietly. And Jung would say that was my complex, the savior complex, the healer archetype gone wrong. I was so identified with being the helper that I forgot I was also human, that I also needed care, that my worth wasn't measured by how useful I was to others. Maya spoke up, her voice soft. "How did you know when you were healed?" I'm not sure healed is the right word. Jung talked about individuation as a lifelong process, becoming more and more yourself, integrating more and more of your shadow, holding more and more of your wholeness. I'm still individuating. I probably will be until I die. Elena smiled. But I knew something had shifted when I could finally sit with my own emptiness without needing to fill it with someone else's needs. When I could be alone with myself and not feel like I was disappearing. "What did you find in the emptiness?" David asked. "Me, just me. Not the therapist, not the savior, not the wise woman everyone needed me to be. Just Elena, ordinary, flawed, human Elena who likes growing herbs and reading mystery novels and sometimes feels lonely and doesn't have all the answers." Aisha's eyes were wet. "Was it worth it, all that pain?" "Every second of it. Because before I was living a half-life. I was a persona, a role, a function. Now I'm a person. And the people I help now, I help them differently. Not from a place of ego, needing to be needed, needing to fix them, but from genuine presence, from wholeness to wholeness." Marcus leaned forward. "Is that what you've been doing with all of us? Seeing our wholeness before we could see it ourselves?" "Maybe, or maybe I just recognized fellow travelers. People brave enough to look at themselves honestly. That's the real work, isn't it? Not becoming someone else. Just becoming who you actually are, underneath all the masks and defenses and stories." Sarah spoke into the silence that followed. "What Elena is describing is the ultimate goal of Jungian work. Individuation. Not perfection. Not happiness. Not even healing in the way we usually think of it. But wholeness. Integration. Becoming conscious of who you are, shadow and light, wound and gift, human and divine." She looked around the circle. "Each of you came here broken in some way. Maya, you were so identified with perfection you couldn't see your humanity. David, you were so busy being who everyone needed that you forgot to be yourself. Aisha, you were so trapped by your mother complex you couldn't claim your own life. Marcus, you were so disconnected from your own depths you sought them in others." "And now?" Maya asked. "Now you're individuating, becoming whole. It's not finished, it never is. But you're conscious now, awake. That's what matters." Elena stood and walked to the window, looking out at the cafe she'd built from her own ashes. Jung said something that got me through the darkest times. He said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." She turned back to face the group. "You all made that choice, to look at your shadows instead of running, to take off your masks instead of hiding, to face your complexes instead of being controlled by them, to become whole instead of staying comfortable. Some days it doesn't feel like progress," Aisha said softly. "I know. Some days you'll feel like you're back at the beginning. That's normal. Individuation isn't linear. It's a spiral. You revisit the same issues at deeper levels. You integrate the same shadows in new ways. But you're not the same person who started this journey. None of you are." The group sat together in silence for a long moment, the weight and beauty of what they'd all been through hanging in the air. Finally, David spoke. "I start my woodworking business next month." Maya smiled. "I hired a new assistant, someone messy and creative. And I'm learning to appreciate it instead of trying to control it." Aisha's voice was stronger than it had been months ago. "I leave for Stanford in 2 weeks. My parents are coming to the airport. We're not perfect, but we're trying." Marcus pulled out his phone and showed them a photo, one of his paintings, wild and colorful and uncontrolled. "I'm having my first show next month. Nothing fancy, just a small gallery. But it's mine." "And what about you, Sarah? Elena asked with a knowing smile. Sarah laughed. I'm learning that even the therapist needs a therapist. I started my own analysis last month. Turns out, watching everyone else individuate makes you realize how much work you still have to do yourself. Elena poured coffee for everyone, a small ritual marking the end of the formal group time. As they sipped and talked, the conversation shifted from heavy to light, from therapeutic to human. Laughter filled the space. Stories were shared. Plans were made. This was what healing looked like, Elena thought. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of authenticity. Not perfection, but wholeness. Not arriving at some destination, but being willing to keep walking the path. Later, after everyone had left, Elena stood alone in the cafe, turning off lights and wiping down tables. She saw the note on the community board, the one that had started so many journeys. You are not who you think you are. You are not who they told you to be. But you could be who you truly are. The question is, are you brave enough to find out? She smiled and added one more line at the bottom. The answer is always yes. You've always been brave enough. You just forgot. As she locked up for the night, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in those dark years before her breakdown. Peace. Not the peace of having arrived somewhere, but the peace of finally being at home in her own skin. She'd spent 20 years helping others find their way home to themselves, and in doing so, she'd found her own way back. The circle had closed, and tomorrow it would open again for someone new. Integration, understanding individuation. What is individuation? Individuation is Jung's term for the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are, the conscious realization of your unique psychological reality. It's not about becoming perfect or achieving some ideal self. It's about becoming whole, integrating your shadow, dismantling false personas, working through complexes, and developing all aspects of your personality. Jung saw individuation as the central task of the second half of life, though it can begin at any age when consciousness awakens. Key aspects of individuation. Integration of the shadow, accepting disowned parts of yourself. Liberation from persona, being authentic rather than acceptable. Working through complexes, healing childhood wounds and patterns. Balancing opposites, masculine, feminine, thinking, feeling, light, dark. Connecting with the self, the larger totality beyond ego. How this showed up in Elena's story. Elena's journey embodied the full individuation process. 1. The crisis. Her breakdown shattered her false identity. Aisha, the descent. She faced her shadow, resentment, anger, emptiness. Through persona work, she recognized the healer was a mask, not her true self. 4. Complex awareness. She identified her savior complex. 5. Integration. She found her authentic self beneath the roles. 6. Emergence. She created a new life from wholeness, not wounding. Elena's story shows that even helpers need healing, even guides need guidance, and even the wise must earn their wisdom through suffering and integration. How all the stories connect. Each character in this book represents a different aspect of the individuation journey. Maya, confronting the shadow. David, removing the false persona. Aisha, healing complexes. Marcus, integrating anima animus. Elena, the full individuation process. But more importantly, they all needed community. The Meridian Cafe became a sacred space where individuals could do their personal work while being held by collective support. Jung understood that while individuation is personal, it doesn't happen in isolation. Reflection questions. 1. What moment in your life cracked you open and forced you to look at yourself honestly? 2. If you were to become fully yourself, no masks, no roles, no pretending, what would change about your life? 3. What does wholeness mean to you? Not perfection, but integration of all your parts, light and shadow, strength and weakness, wound and gift. Your practice, creating your individuation map. Take time this week to map your journey. Part 1. Where you were. What masks were you wearing? What shadows were you hiding? What complexes were running your life? Who were you pretending to be? Part 2. The crisis. What broke you open? What could no longer be denied? When did you realize you couldn't keep living the old way? Part 3. The work. What have you integrated? What masks have you removed? What shadows have you befriended? What complexes are you conscious of now? Part 4. Where you're going. What does your authentic life look like? What parts of yourself still need integration? What's your next edge of growth? Who are you becoming? This isn't about having all the answers. It's about becoming conscious of the journey you're on. Jung's wisdom. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Moving forward, your journey begins. You've now encountered the core concepts of Jungian psychology through story. The shadow that holds what you've rejected. The persona that masks your authenticity. The complexes that hijack your consciousness. The projections that keep you from real intimacy. The individuation process that calls you home to yourself. But knowing these concepts intellectually isn't enough. Jung's work demands that you live it, that you look at your own shadow, that you remove your own masks, that you face your own complexes, that you individuate your own life. This is hard, sacred work. It will ask everything of you. It will require you to see yourself honestly, even when that seeing is painful. It will demand that you give up who you thought you were to become who you actually are. But on the other side of this work, freedom, authenticity, wholeness, the capacity to love and be loved as you truly are, the peace of finally being at home in your own skin. The question from the note at the Meridian Cafe was meant for you. You are not who you think you are. You are not who they told you to be. But you could be who you truly are. The question is, are you brave enough to find out? The answer is yes. You've always been brave enough. You just forgot. Now remember, epilogue, your invitation. Dear reader, you've just witnessed 5 journeys of transformation. But this book was never really about Maya, David, Aisha, Marcus, or Elena. It was about you. Somewhere in these pages, you saw yourself. Maybe in Maya's perfectionism or David's people-pleasing. Perhaps in Aisha's inability to leave or Marcus's pattern of choosing chaos. Or maybe in Elena's burnout and eventual awakening. Jung's work isn't theoretical, it's experiential. These concepts, shadow, persona, complexes, anima, animus, individuation, they're not ideas to understand. They're realities to live. So what now? Start where you are. If you recognized your shadow in these stories, begin shadow work. Journal about what triggers you. Notice what you judge in others. If you saw your persona, practice asking, what do I actually want? Remove one mask. Say one authentic thing. If you identified your complex, use the pause protocol. Notice when you regress. Respond from your adult self. If you recognized your projections, develop the qualities you seek in others. Become whole in yourself. If you're ready for deeper work, find a Jungian analyst or therapist who can guide you. Find your community. You don't have to do this alone. Jung understood that individuation happens in relationship. Find your own Meridian Cafe, a therapist, a group, a trusted friend, a community where you can be real. Be patient with yourself. Individuation is the work of a lifetime. You won't finish it. You won't perfect it. But every moment of consciousness, every integrated shadow, every removed mask, every healed complex, it all matters. Trust the process. There will be times when you feel like you're going backward, when the shadow seems darker, when the persona feels safer, when the complex has more power than ever. This is normal. The spiral path of individuation revisits the same places at deeper levels. You're not failing, you're deepening. Remember why this matters. You have one life, one chance to become who you truly are. Not who your parents wanted, not who society expected, not who you thought you should be, but who you actually are, in all your flawed, beautiful, human wholeness. That's what Jung's work offers, permission to be fully yourself, the tools to integrate all your parts, the courage to face your truth, and the promise that on the other side of this difficult journey lies something precious, your authentic life. The Meridian Cafe exists in your world too. Maybe it's a therapist's office. Maybe it's a coffee shop where you journal. Maybe it's a group of friends committed to real conversation. Maybe it's just the quiet moments when you finally stop running and start listening to the whispers of your true self. Wherever it is, I hope you find it. And when you do, I hope you have the courage to walk through the door. Your journey of becoming awaits. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung.